The old mining station floated in the darkness between stars, its metal walls scarred by years of cosmic dust and radiation. Inside the cramped salvage bay, 3 beings worked quietly among piles of broken machinery and twisted metal. The air recyclers wheezed with each breath, reminding everyone that time was running out. Jin-Wu moved carefully through the debris, his golden skin catching the dim emergency lights. Once, his people had been warriors who protected entire star systems. The Zephyrians were known across the galaxy for their skill in battle and their code of honor. But that was before their sun collapsed into itself, taking their homeworld and billions of lives with it. Now, Jinwu was alone, the last of his kind, picking through scrap metal to survive another day. His hands found a piece of rare alloy, still valuable despite the damage. He held it up to examine the metal, remembering when his grandfather taught him to identify different materials by touch. Back then, such knowledge was meant for choosing the right metals to forge ceremonial weapons. Now it helped him find parts, worth enough credits to buy food and air filters. Across the bay, a strange blue light pulsed inside a crystal shell mounted on mechanical legs. This was Kai-7, though he rarely spoke of the name his creators had given him before they abandoned everything physical. The Ascended Ones had built him as an experiment, putting an organic brain inside an artificial body to see if consciousness could bridge the gap between flesh and machine. When they succeeded in uploading themselves into pure energy, they left Kai-7 behind like a broken tool. His 6 mechanical legs moved with perfect precision as he connected cables to the station's main computer. Data flowed through his hybrid, mind faster than any purely biological brain could process, but slower than the digital gods who had created and discarded him. He was caught between 2 worlds, belonging to neither. The station's systems were failing badly. Kai-7 could see the cascade of errors spreading through every circuit, every life support system, every piece of equipment that kept them alive in the void. His organic brain felt something his creators would have called worry, though they claimed such emotions were primitive and useless. Near the large window that looked out into space, 2 figures sat side by side at a monitoring station. Hannah and Daesong were twins, their pale skin marked with the subtle changes their creators had built into their genes. Their eyes glowed faintly in the darkness, modified to see radiation patterns that would blind normal humans. Their lungs could process air that would poison others, and their blood carried proteins that helped them survive in extreme cold. The core worlds had commissioned their creation during the Great Expansion, when humanity needed people who could live on planets too harsh for normal colonists. But when the expansion slowed and genetic modification became unfashionable, public opinion turned against the enhanced. People called them unnatural, dangerous, a corruption of pure human genetics. The twins found themselves exiled to the far edges of space, unwanted by the very people who had paid to create them. Hannah watched the radiation readings spike and fall on her display. Her modified eyes could see patterns in the data that others would miss, but the information only confirmed what they all knew. The cosmic storms were getting stronger, and their failing shields could not protect them much longer. The main reactor is down to 30% efficiency, she said quietly, not wanting to break the silence that had settled over their small group like a protective blanket. At this rate, we have maybe 6 months before everything shuts down. Daesung nodded, without looking away from his own screens. His enhanced vision was tracking the debris field outside, calculating the paths of thousands of metal fragments, spinning through space. Some might be valuable, but most were just more reminders of civilizations that had risen and fallen, while they struggled to survive. Jinwu set down the piece of alloy and walked over to join them. His movements still carried the grace of a trained warrior, even though his ceremonial armor was long gone and his weapons had been sold for food years ago. He looked out at the stars, remembering when space had seemed full of possibilities instead of just emptiness. The Galactic Council stopped sending supply ships 8 months ago, he said, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had watched hope die slowly. I think they have forgotten we exist. Kai 7's mechanical legs clicked against the metal floor as he approached the others. His crystal shell pulsed with soft blue light as he processed the station's status reports. The organic part of his brain that still felt emotions struggled with something that might have been fear, though his creators would have mocked such primitive responses. Supply drop schedule indicates next delivery in 14 months, he announced, in his synthesized voice. Current life support degradation rate makes this statistically impossible to achieve. The three beings looked at each other, sharing a moment of understanding that needed no words. They had all been forgotten by their people, cast aside by civilizations that had no use for warriors without wars, hybrids without purpose, or genetic modifications that reminded everyone of uncomfortable truths about progress and change. Suddenly, a soft chime echoed through the salvage bay. Hannah's modified eyes focused on her communication panel as new data flowed across the screen. An unknown ship was approaching, small and unfamiliar, broadcasting signals from a world called Earth. None of them had heard of Earth before. It was not listed in any of the major star charts they possessed. The airlock hissed open with a sound that echoed through the quiet station. Ginwoo instinctively stepped back, his warrior instincts still sharp, despite years of exile. Kaisavon's mechanical legs positioned him near the computer terminals, ready to lock down systems if needed. The twins moved closer together, their enhanced eyes studying the figure that emerged from the small Earth vessel. The human who stepped through wore a simple white and blue uniform without the elaborate decorations that most species favored. His helmet came off to reveal a kind face with graying hair and tired eyes that had seen many difficult decisions. He looked around the salvage bay with genuine interest, rather than the disgust or pity they usually encountered. "My name is Captain Park Min-ho," he said in clear, simple words. "I come from a planet called Earth. I have traveled very far to find you three." Jinwoo crossed his arms, not trusting this unexpected visitor. "We are nobody special, human. We are the forgotten ones that nobody wants. Why would your people care about us?" Minho smiled and pulled out a small device that projected images into the air above his palm. The hologram showed a blue and green world, with white clouds swirling around it. Cities stretched across the continents, but these were unlike anything they had seen before. The buildings mixed different architectural styles from dozens of species, creating something entirely new. "This is Earth," Minho said proudly. "We are young compared to most galactic civilizations. We joined the wider community only recently, but we have learned something important that others seem to have forgotten." The hologram changed to show the inside of a massive space station. Beings from many different species worked together on complicated machinery. Children of various races played together in gardens filled with plants from many worlds. Scientists, with different kinds of bodies, shared research around conference tables. Kai 7's optical sensors focused on the images with intense interest. This appears to show unprecedented levels of interspecies cooperation. Most civilizations maintain strict separation protocols. "That is exactly right," Minho replied. "On Earth, we believe that families are not just made by blood or genetics. Families are made by choice, by loyalty, by caring for each other when nobody else will." Hannah stepped forward, her glowing eyes searching the captain's face for signs of deception. She had learned to be very careful about trusting the promises of strangers. Every species says nice things at first. Then they discover what we really are and change their minds. Minho nodded seriously. "I know exactly what you are. Jinwoo, you are the last Zephyrian warrior, trained in combat techniques that took your people thousands of years to develop. Your skills could help protect our colony ships as they explored dangerous regions of space." He turned to face Kaisevan directly. "You are proof that consciousness can exist in both organic and artificial forms. Our scientists dream of building bridges between human minds and computer systems, but they need someone who already understands both worlds. Finally, he looked at the twins with respect instead of fear. Hannah and Daesung, you were created to help humans survive on worlds that would kill anyone else. We have planets in our territory that are beautiful but deadly. We need people who can not only survive there, but teach others how to live there safely. Daesung shook his head slowly. The people who made us decided we were mistakes. They threw us away because we reminded them that they had tried to improve on natural human design. Why would Earth be different? Because we understand something that older civilizations have forgotten, Minho replied. Progress is not about staying pure or keeping things the same. Progress is about growing, changing, and becoming better by including more perspectives, not fewer. The hologram changed again to show Earth's space fleet. The ships were smaller than those of major powers, but they moved with purpose and coordination. Mixed crews of humans and aliens worked together on the bridges, their different abilities combining to create something stronger than any single species could achieve alone. We have been monitoring communications from this station for months, Minho continued. We do not see outcasts, or failures, or genetic mistakes. We see exactly the kind of people who built everything good in human history. We see survivors, innovators, and individuals with skills we desperately need. Suddenly, red warning lights began flashing throughout the station. The artificial gravity fluctuated, making everyone grab onto nearby surfaces for support. Kai-7's systems detected multiple cascading failures in the life support systems. The station was finally beginning its final collapse. Atmospheric recycling has dropped below critical levels, Kai-7 announced, his voice carrying electronic undertones that suggested stress. Station structural integrity compromised in sectors 7 through 12. Minho looked around at the failing station, then back at the three beings who had survived here against impossible odds. His expression was calm but determined, like someone who had already made up his mind about something important. You can stay here and die forgotten, honored for your sacrifice by no one, he said quietly. Or you can come with me and live as part of something bigger. Earth needs you, but more than that, Earth wants you. We choose you as family. He extended his hand toward them, palm open, in the universal gesture of peaceful offering. The choice is yours, but you need to decide quickly. My ship has enough life support for all of us, but this station does not have much time left. The three outcasts looked at each other, sharing a silent conversation that needed no words. They had been abandoned before, but something in this human captain's eyes suggested he might actually mean what he said. 6 months after leaving the dying station, Jinwoo stood in a large training room on Earth, sweat dripping from his golden skin. Across from him, Colonel Lee Ji-hai held a practice sword with the confidence of someone who had trained for decades. Around them, young human soldiers watched with fascination as two very different fighting styles met in careful combat. Jinwoo moved like flowing water, his blade tracing elegant circles in the air. This was the ancient way of his people, where every strike was both beautiful and deadly. But Ji-hai fought with sharp, quick movements designed for efficiency rather than ceremony. When their practice swords met, the sound echoed through the training hall like music. Your people fought with honor, Ji-hai said, stepping back and lowering her weapon. But honor and winning do not have to be separate things. Watch this. She demonstrated a modified version of Jinwoo's flowing attack, keeping the graceful movement, but adding a hidden second strike that would catch an enemy by surprise. The combination was still beautiful to watch, but now it was also more practical in real combat. For the first time in years, Jinwoo felt the pride of a true warrior rising in his chest. His techniques were not being dismissed as old-fashioned or useless. Instead, they were being studied, improved, and taught to others who would carry them into the future. On my homeworld, we called this type of technique Solmater, Jinwoo said, his voice carrying warmth that had been missing for Too long. It means the harmony of blade and purpose. Every movement must have meaning. Ji smiled and bowed in the formal way that showed respect between warriors. Then teach us Somadar properly. Our colony ships need protectors who understand that fighting is not just about strength. It is about knowing what is worth protecting and why. Meanwhile, in a bright laboratory filled with advanced computers and holographic displays, Kai-7 worked alongside Dr. Yoon Soyoung on projects that would have been impossible for either of them alone. His crystal shell reflected the soft glow of data streams as organic neurons fired in perfect rhythm with quantum processors. The Ascended Ones believed consciousness was something to escape from, Kai-7 explained, his synthesized voice carrying notes of wonder as he processed information faster than any purely biological or artificial mind could handle. They saw physical existence as a limitation to overcome. Soyoung monitored the experimental interface they had built together, watching as organic and artificial thought patterns merged into something entirely new. But consciousness is not a ladder to climb away from. It is more like a garden that grows stronger when different types of plants work together. The hybrid being that Kai-7 had become was no longer caught between two worlds. Instead, he had become a bridge that connected them, showing that organic intuition and artificial precision could enhance each other rather than compete. His unique perspective was helping Earth develop technology that no purely human or purely artificial intelligence could have created. In the deep underground chambers, beneath Earth's harshest desert, Hannah and Daesong worked with teams of human volunteers in environments that would kill normal people within minutes. The radiation levels would cook unprotected flesh, and the temperature swings ranged from freezing to boiling in regular cycles. But the twins moved through these deadly conditions as easily as others might walk through a garden. Their modified genetics allowed them to see patterns in the radiation, predict the temperature changes, and survive exposure that would be instantly fatal to baseline humans. The core worlds created us to be weapons for their expansion, Daesung said as he guided a group of volunteers through a simulation of conditions on a distant world where Earth wanted to build a colony. They made us strong so we could survive, where others could not. Dr. Kim Youngjin, the project leader, watched the data readouts with amazement. The twins were not just surviving in impossible conditions, they were teaching others how to adapt and thrive there as well. But you have become something much more important than weapons. You have become guides who can show us how to live on worlds we never thought possible. Hannah smiled as she helped a young volunteer adjust her protective equipment. We are bridges now, not weapons. We help others cross from the world they know to worlds they never imagined they could reach. For the first time in their lives, the genetic modifications that had made them outcasts were seen as gifts rather than curses. Human volunteers lined up to undergo similar enhancements, knowing that the twins had proven such changes could be made without losing what made them human. In the evenings, the three former outcasts often met in the observation deck of their residential building, looking out at the lights of the city below. Earth's capital was alive with activity as beings from dozens of species worked, played, and lived together in ways that would have been impossible anywhere else in the galaxy. I had forgotten what it felt like to have a purpose, Jinwoo said. One evening as they watched ships from many worlds come and go from the nearby spaceport, Kai-7's crystal shell pulsed with warm light. Statistical analysis indicates that our productivity and satisfaction levels have increased by over 400% since arriving on Earth. But the mathematics cannot capture the qualitative changes in our existence. Hannah laughed, a sound that carried joy instead of the bitter humor they had all known for too long. He means we are happy, brother. We finally have a real home. They had found more than just acceptance on Earth. They had found a place where their differences were valued, their skills were needed, and their presence made the whole community stronger. The emergency alarms screamed through Earth's Defense Council chambers as Admiral Chang Soo-jin stared at the tactical display. 300 massive warships hung in perfect formation at the edge of the solar system, their dark hulls bristling with weapons that could turn planets into dust. The hegemony had come to Earth with the largest fleet anyone had seen in generations. On the main screen, Ambassador Regeth appeared in all his terrifying glory. His crystalline body caught the light from his ship's bridge and threw it back in sharp, cold patterns. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone who had never been told no by anyone. "Humans of Earth," Regeth said, his words cutting through the council chamber like ice. "You have contaminated your pure species by accepting genetic aberrations, artificial abominations, and the worthless remains of failed races. Give them to us for proper disposal, or we will burn your primitive world until nothing remains but ashes." The council chamber erupted in frightened voices. Some members demanded immediate surrender, pointing out that Earth's entire fleet numbered less than 100 ships. Others called for resistance, but their voices shook when they looked at the overwhelming force waiting to destroy everything they loved. President Oh Sung-ho tried to maintain order, but the fear in the room was too strong. 3 lives against billions seemed like simple mathematics to many of the representatives. Earth had been part of galactic civilization for less than a century, and now they faced extinction because of their radical policies about accepting outcasts. Jin, Wu, Kai-7, Hannah, and Dae-Soon stood at the back of the chamber, listening to the debate about their fate. They had been given the right to speak, but the weight of responsibility pressed down on them like a crushing gravity. Earth's entire population was in danger because humans had been foolish enough to call them family. Jinwoo stepped forward, his warriors bearing unchanged despite the terrible circumstances. His golden skin seemed to glow under the harsh chamber lights as he addressed the terrified representatives. "Honored Council," he said, his voice carrying the strength that had once rallied Zephyrian armies. "We understand the choice you face. We have lived as outcasts long enough to know that survival sometimes requires difficult sacrifices." He looked directly at President Oh, meeting the leader's eyes with steady resolve. "We volunteer to surrender ourselves to the hegemony. Earth has given us more joy and purpose than we ever dared dream possible. Let us give something back by saving the world that chose to love us." Kai-7's crystal shell pulsed with soft blue light as he added his voice to the offer. "Mathematical analysis confirms that Earth's survival probability drops to 12.7%. If you resist the hegemony fleet, our individual lives represent minimal value compared to the preservation of the first civilization that truly embraced hybrid consciousness." The twins stepped forward together, their enhanced eyes reflecting the emergency lighting with an otherworldly glow. "We were created to protect human life," Hannah said quietly. "If our deaths can save billions of humans, then we fulfill our original purpose." Before Dae-Sung could add his voice to their sacrifice, Admiral Chang Soo-jin rose from her seat. Her face was set in an expression of fierce determination that surprised even the strongest advocates for resistance. She had commanded Earth's defense forces for 20 years, and her voice carried the authority of someone who had dedicated her life to protecting humanity. "With all due respect to our friends," she said, her words ringing through the chamber like a battle cry, "they completely misunderstand what Earth stands for. We do not protect family because it is convenient or profitable or easy. We protect family because that is what the word family means." She turned to face the holographic image of Regeth directly, her eyes blazing with fury that made even the crystalline ambassador pause. "Regeth, you can take your ultimatum and your fleet and discover exactly how much damage humans can inflict when someone threatens the people we love. We do not negotiate with bullies, and we absolutely do not abandon family." The chamber exploded in competing voices, some supporting the Admiral's defiant stance, while others demanded she reconsider the impossible odds. But President Oh raised his hand for silence, and when he spoke, his words carried the weight of history. "The Earth has made its decision," he announced, his voice steady, despite the magnitude of what he was saying. "These beings are not contamination, or aberrations, or genetic mistakes. They are citizens of Earth, our colleagues, our friends, and our chosen family. Any force that seeks to harm them will face the full might of humanity's determination." He turned to Admiral Cheng with a nod that sealed Earth's fate. "Admiral, mobilize the entire fleet. If the hegemony wants a fight, we will give them one they will never forget." As emergency klaxons wailed throughout the solar system and Earth's ships began moving to defensive positions, Jinwoo felt something he had not experienced since his homeworld died. Someone was willing to fight for him not because they had to, not because it benefited them, but simply because they had chosen to call him family. Kai Sivan's optical sensors registered the impossible odds, but his organic brain components felt something that defied mathematical logic: hope. The twins gripped each other's hands as they watched their adopted world prepare for war against an enemy that should have been unbeatable. Earth's small fleet moved out to face the hegemony armada, and across the galaxy, other forgotten peoples watched and wondered if someone would finally stand up for the outcasts and the abandoned. 6 months after the Battle of Seoul, Jinwoo stood in the massive hall of Earth's new galactic embassy, watching ships from hundreds of different worlds dock at the orbital platforms outside. Through the enormous windows, he could see vessels he had never imagined possible, sleek craft built by the tethered minds who had freed themselves from hegemony control, organic ships grown by plant-based civilizations, and crystalline vessels that sang as they moved through space. Beside him, Kai Sivan's crystal shell pulsed with warm golden light as he processed communication streams from across the galaxy. His hybrid consciousness was handling thousands of conversations simultaneously, messages of hope from species who had thought themselves alone, requests for asylum from genetic outcasts, and offers of alliance from civilizations that had been hiding in the dark corners of space. "The statistical probability of lasting galactic peace has increased by 347% since the battle," Kai Seven announced, his synthesized voice carrying something that might have been wonder, but more importantly, the qualitative measures of hope and cooperation have reached levels previously considered impossible. Hannah and Daesung moved through the crowd of diverse beings that filled the embassy hall, their enhanced senses helping them coordinate the complex logistics of welcoming so many different species. Their genetic modifications, once seen as abominations by the core worlds, now made them perfect ambassadors for beings who had been changed, enhanced, or modified in ways that other civilizations could not understand. "Remember when we thought we were the only ones?" Daesung asked his sister, as they watched a group of children from 12 different species playing together in the embassy's garden. The youngsters were learning each other's games, creating new rules that worked for tentacles, claws, energy fields, and human hands. Hannah smiled as she helped translate between a silicon-based mathematician and a gaseous philosopher who were trying to collaborate on a research project. "We were never the only ones. We just had not found each other yet." President Oh Sung-ho walked through the embassy with a sense of amazement that had not faded despite months of impossible developments. The building itself was a marvel of cooperative engineering, human architects working with crystalline designers, void-touched engineers who understood how to build in zero gravity, and plant-based constructors who could grow living walls that filtered air and provided food. He approached the 4 beings who had started this revolution simply by being willing to trust that humanity might be different from the species that had abandoned them. Jinwoo still moved with a warrior's grace, but now his bearing carried the confidence of someone who knew his skills were valued and his presence was wanted. "Do you ever regret leaving that dying station?" President O asked gently. Jinwoo looked out at the impossible fleet of diverse vessels, at former enemies working together to repair battle damage, at species helping each other solve problems that none could handle alone. His golden skin had regained the luster it had possessed in his youth. His warrior's pride restored, not through conquest but through belonging, regret. Jinwoo's voice carried warmth that had been missing for too many years. No, I do not regret anything. We were not forgotten, we just had not found our true family yet. A soft chime echoed through the embassy hall as new arrivals were announced. Another group of refugees had arrived, beings who had heard the stories, spreading across the galaxy about a world where different meant valuable rather than dangerous. The newcomers looked around nervously, expecting rejection or pity or the kind of false acceptance that usually preceded abandonment. Instead, they were greeted by volunteers from dozens of species, all of whom had once been outcasts themselves. The tethered mind who had been enslaved by his creators now helped other artificial beings find freedom. The gene-lost warrior who had been exiled for her modifications now trained security forces that protected the embassy. The void-touched engineer who had survived the destruction of his entire system now designed the living quarters that would house the newest refugees. Dr. Kim Ung-jin approached the group with the kind of documentation that had once seemed impossible. Official papers, recognizing the newcomers as citizens of the Galactic Federation of Free Peoples, the alliance that had grown from Earth's radical experiment in acceptance. "Welcome home," Dr. Kim said simply, using the phrase that had become the motto of the new alliance. "We have been waiting for you." Kai-7 sensors detected more ships approaching from deep space, another wave of beings who had decided to risk hope one more time. His organic brain components felt something his creators would have dismissed as primitive emotion, but which he now understood was the foundation of everything worthwhile in the universe. "The family continues to grow," he announced, his crystal shell brightening with joy that translated across every species present. President O looked around the embassy hall, watching former outcasts help newer arrivals, seeing beings who had been enemies working together on projects that would benefit everyone, observing children who would grow up knowing that difference was something to celebrate rather than fear. "So what happens next?" he asked. Hannah laughed, the sound carrying pure happiness instead of the bitter humor that had once been her only defense against a hostile universe. "Now we do what humans taught us to do best. We make room at the table for everyone who wants to join us. We share what we have with those who need it. We prove that family is not about where you come from, it is about where you choose to belong." As if summoned by her words, the communication arrays came alive with new messages from across the galaxy. More requests for asylum, more offers of alliance, more beings who had heard that somewhere in the universe, there was a place where no one had to face the darkness alone. The revolution that had begun with 3 forgotten outcasts and 1 human captain who believed in chosen family had become something that would reshape the galaxy forever.